Hey guys, this is Jake Calderon with JAYONBOXING here giving you a personal prediction for Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, because of course I am. And as always, this is just my take, of course. Your predictions can be left down in the comments section below. This is, it's a fight. It's scheduled. I won't go so far as to call it interesting, but it's here. So we'd love it if you guys dropped all your thoughts, predictions, all that good stuff down in the comments section below. And a little bit of fight info here. We have Jake Paul taking on Nate Diaz. This will be at the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas, airing live on DAZN pay-per-view. Because that's right, this fight's not only happening, you have to pay extra to watch it, of course. This will be taking place in the cruiserweight division with no titles on the line, obviously. Yeah. Another Jake Paul fight, and maybe the most interesting one yet in some respects, and in others, maybe not. It's hard to say. For the first time in his fighting career, Paul is coming off the back of a loss. That does make it interesting. And now he's facing maybe the most difficult to predict opponent of his career in Nate Diaz. Kind of interesting as well. You have Paul in this fight who really can't afford to lose 2 fights in a row. It just hurts whatever credibility he has left in the sport, especially if he wants to remain a draw. And in Diaz, you have another guy from MMA, but one that has a history in boxing to some extent and certainly has a reputation where he doesn't want to lose to a YouTube star. Just not something he's trying to do. Not good for either of them, to be honest. So you know there's at least a need for both of them to try in this fight. So will Paul use his power and size to keep his career alive, or will the volume and grit of Diaz end the Paul boxing pipe dream? Let's break this one down. And we'll start with the Disney kid here. For Paul to win, don't force your power. You might not be able to hurt Diaz anyway. He's a guy who's been caught with small gloves in MMA, and for the most part his chin holds up. So boxing gloves might not be small enough to even hurt him, especially if it's predictable right hands that you're just trying to land down the middle. He's got a pretty good chin to begin with, so it really needs to be an issue of speed that you can maybe catch him with by surprise, and overall your force, because you're a bigger dude, might be enough to put a bit of a hurt on him. Also, you just don't want to drain yourself. You're a fighter that at this point has shown your cardio can be an issue. Maybe it's the weight, maybe it's just, you being new to the sport, whatever it might be. You do seem to get a bit faded in these fights. You have to make sure that you're not forcing yourself to put so much into every single blow that it tires yourself out. Don't do his work for him. Instead, just set it up naturally by, again, not forcing every single shot and just allowing for it to come more naturally. That speed and power, you can also set it up with a body attack at times, but ultimately just let it come naturally and you'll see a much better result than if you're trying to force it. I would also say set up the right. With any younger fighter, the setup is a lot harder for them to learn than the shot itself. And I think that's becoming the case with Paul as his fights get gradually tougher for him. And you're seeing less of him blowing people out of the water and more of him having to kind of add to the nuance of his game. He needs to set the right hand up as opposed to just trying to throw it and hope for the best. And what's more, people know that's the shot you're looking for, so if they can prepare for that, they have a much better chance of being successful against you. Easy ways to do it, of course. Jab. Double up the jab. You want to step to the side with it a bit more and maybe go to your left so you have a much clearer lane for that right hand. Even throwing the left hand, especially in a hook form, can potentially line people up for it because they're just not expecting that shot to come directly behind it if you drilled for this effectively. Another thing is Diaz is a bit slower handed. If you can time it over his lazier jab potentially, you have a better chance of landing it. It just can't be so predictable that everyone sees it coming. You have to set it up a little bit more. And finally, control the distance. You don't always want to be backing up and getting out of range. I think that'll look too negative and just might impact the scoring a bit unfortunately for you. Ultimately, he'll also just chase you down and wear you down because he is a bit of a cardio beast in Diaz. So you just don't want to give him that chance or give him that kind of confidence. You also don't want to always be inside. Again, he's a guy who might look for volume in this fight and you don't want to give him that chance either. You just don't want to do him any favors. You want to be in a range where you can flick out a fast jab, land that right hand behind it. Again, set it up sometimes with the left and then step to the side and reset. When you're on the inside at times, you can tie him up. At other times, you can set up work by going to the body so that it's upstairs available for you later on in the contest. But tying him up might be the best option for you in some cases because after you land your work, you kind of control his potentials for counters. Just keep that range where you want it, set up that right hand, and let the power come naturally. It'll be much more beneficial to you in this fight. Now, switching over to Diaz. For Diaz to win, you want to make it ugly. You just can't have a boxing match. Even if you try to and we're doing well, I just don't know if you get the benefit of the doubt in this fight because, quite honestly, Paul might be the name in boxing to some degree, and people have a certain expectation of you being an action fighter. You're also older and slower, and you're not a huge puncher, not even with smaller gloves, let alone bigger boxing gloves. So you're not going to necessarily end him with a single shot anyway. You need to make it more of a fight. What's more, that gives Paul too much time to think if you're just being calm and trying to box and be that boxer-puncher. You have to take that from him as well, because he's still young enough where he has to think before he does. This also, again, as you're making it ugly, might tire him. If you're wrestling with him on the inside, not literally, of course, but if you're just trying to drag him into those deep waters and really test him late, I think if you get that started early, make it ugly, you give yourself a good chance. I would also say keep your volume high. Again, as mentioned, you're not a huge puncher, and outside of a Stockton slap, you're not known for a single impactful shot that can end it if you're just trying to box and counter him with something. Your game has to be volume. Furthermore, Paul has shown again he can slow down. This ties in very much with that opening point of making it ugly. You just need to show activity. Make it count while he's tiring in these rounds as they progress. A single shot might not wipe Paul out anyway because he's shown a decent enough beard, so you have to make it a volume game, and that ultimately could be what wears him out. Overwhelm him if he's unable to keep up with your work and unable to really do anything successful. It'll also make his right hand less impactful as he's getting tired, and then you can really get to work. And tying in with the other points I mentioned, tax the body inside. Another way, along with the volume, that will make Paul tired, and that has to be something you're trying to do here. If you have one distinct advantage over him, it's your cardio. You're an athlete that really emphasizes cardio. You have to make that show up in this fight, or you're really giving away your best advantage. It also helps keep the fight a fight if you're just trying to get on the inside and make it work, as opposed to that boxer-puncher approach. It's just not going to work for you that way. This is also a way to kind of negate the speed disadvantage. You're a slower fighter, but if you're on the inside, you don't have to worry so much about the speed because he's not going to get the proper arc or torque on his shots anyway. As long as you're inside and not letting him back up to counter, the volume beats the threat of speed due to Paul's just inability to work that speed on the inside. Make it ugly, get inside, and go to work, and keep that output high. That is ultimately what will potentially burden Paul to the point where he's just not able to keep up in this contest. Now, in terms of my pick, let me preface this pick by saying I've basically never predicted a Jake Paul fight correctly. I don't know why, but this is just not my area for great selections, or my area of whatever expertise you want to call it. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But in the event, that is the preface, just so you know. That said, with likely another jinx pick right here, I'm rolling with Jake Paul on this one. I think his natural size advantage, his youthfulness, the speed he has, and his overall freshness as a fighter should be enough to win this fight. However, it could get tougher down the stretch as this is a 10-round fight. However, I think Paul will start quickly, get good work going quickly early on in the contest, land, kind of stick and move, and make Diaz miss. He is a bit slower. Early rounds will repeat this pattern pretty consistent. Paul might even stun Diaz a time or two, or at least knock him off balance a bit, what have you, but I think he'll have some solid success. Those middle frames is where things might tighten up a bit more, as gradually the change for Diaz will be that he's still fresh and is making it a bit rougher, and Paul might begin to fade. Down the stretch, Diaz will make it close, chasing the fight and using his cardio to his advantage to kind of tighten up those scores as mentioned, but ultimately, I think it could go either way, but I'm picking Jake Paul via split decision. Winner, Jake Paul via split. Now, in terms of the betting odds here, you have Paul as a sizable favor coming in at a minus 340 with Diaz coming in at a plus 240. To me, the value here is in Diaz and nothing else. I don't think Paul is established enough to be a 3-1 favorite against a guy who has some background in boxing. You're going to want to take that Diaz line if you're going to take anything at all. Again, you want it to be a relatively small to medium-sized bet, especially because if Diaz wins, even if you think he wins the rounds, it's still going to be a decision, in my opinion, unless he gets really, really all over Paul in this fight. And you just don't know how these decisions go in boxing. Boxing's a tricky sport, but that's where I'd see the value there. In terms of the over-under, it's set at 7.5, with the over coming in at a minus 120 and the under coming in at a minus 110. That's pretty tricky too, but I do like the over in this one. You're getting basically even odds there for an over in this case. And again, you have a couple of rounds to play with there, so I'd probably go with the over in a mid-sized bet in my opinion, but in any event, those are your odds. And my prediction record as of this recording is 24-10 with 16 exact, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Love to hear your thoughts, predictions, bets, so on and so forth. Also, we'll be dropping a fight preview for this one in a few days. It would be great if you guys dropped any questions you have about the fight in the comments. I'll try to answer a few of them in the preview. Hopefully, that'll be fun. Deadline for the questions is Sunday night. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB, and of course on Threads at JAYONBOXING, and you can email me at jayunboxing@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you there. Also, be sure to check out jayunboxing.com for schedule, results, betting odds, rankings, grades, all that good stuff. And as always, until next time.